can see it if you have shared it. Okay, thank you so much. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Okay. Were you able to share it?
Yes, I was.
Great, great, great. So let me just first begin by welcoming those that are watching us. Welcome to Unbridled Conversations with Lawrence Musunte. So today in the house, we have our sister Maria Mahlo is our guest. She is the author of She Was Raped in MOSAIC, YANGU. I only know YANGU because YANGU is Swahili for mine. Yes. So our topic tonight is sexual abuse. So we have a lot of women and children who are victims of sexual violence in our homes, in the workplaces, in the communities we live in, and right in our churches where people are supposed to feel safe. They are sexually violated. And most of these women and children, they do not have a voice. They do not have a voice to speak out. They live in fear. They are traumatized. They are afraid of the perpetrator in our society.
Yes.
So today, our sister Maria is going to help us unpack this conversation as she tells our story. So welcome, Maria. Welcome to Unbridled Conversations with Lawrence Musunte.
Thank you very much, Lawrence.
Please feel free to introduce yourself, and then you can continue. Yes.
I'm very honored to be here with you. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and speak to you and your audience.
Thank you so much. We are honored.
And I think you've done enough introduction. You've said a mouthful about me.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to add, because sometimes when you introduce yourself and you say so much about yourself, people start to have expectations. They're like, oh, okay. And then you start talking, they go like, okay, that's not what we thought we were going to get.
Exactly.
But as Mr. Musunte has said, I'm here tonight to speak about sexual abuse, sexual traumas, and the fact that we don't talk about it. It is like an elephant in the room. We don't talk about it, especially within our religious organizations. And the main reason for it is because most of the time we protect the dignity of the perpetrator.
Yes.
I say dignity with air quotes because why should the victim carry the burden of the perpetrator? The book that you referred to, She Was Raped, the subtitle, it says The Burden and Shame. Because that's the burden and shame, because we say she's raped or she was raped. We never say he raped her. And I say in the book, maybe, just maybe, if we said he raped her instead of saying she was raped, maybe that will help us to realize that the core of our problem is not the tragedy of a woman being raped, but the crime committed by the man who raped her. Because when you say she is raped, the spotlight is now on the victim. You move away from the perpetrator. He's protected. Sometimes when the rapist is a family member, they will tell you that blood is thicker than water, so you need to protect the perpetrator. And I'm like, what happens to the thickness of the blood when a father rapes his daughter? Why is the thickness not consistent? Why is it thick when a crime is committed, but why is it thin when the crime is committed, but becomes thicker when the crime is supposed to be addressed? So I can talk the whole day. I think I think I've done a bit of introduction of myself.
We might bring in one or two people that want to be on the conversation at some point. When I see them, I'll be able to allow them to join us on the panel. And so there are certain questions that people would like to ask, and they will run it through the broadcast in their comments and things like that. But I've got about 4 that we will be able to reserve at the end. So what we want today is to listen, to hear from you, because you have been there. You are talking about your story. You are talking about...
It's not something theoretical. It's practical. No. It's a life I've lived.
You're talking about a lived reality.
Yes.
And so a few days ago, I had to garner my courage to talk about something that happened to me at the age of 12. And for some reason, the pain, the shame, and even to some extent the guilty associated to it, I have been trying so much to push it outside of me, to try and hide it as if it never happened. But I do reckon that by me coming out and telling that story, so many other men out there that were sexually molested, like I was sexually molested at the age of 12, can find their voice and also add to the conversation.
Yes.
And so I had to tell that story, as painful as it is to go back and see these things happening to me again.
Relive the trauma all over again.
Yes, but I knew that by doing so, I'm going to help someone.
Yes, that's true.
If someone would be able to say, oh, I like Lawrence, I follow Lawrence and what he's doing, and when they know that Lawrence has been in this pit hole, and by the grace of God, he has been pulled out of it, and he's okay, he's fine, he's moving on. That is the story, and that is why you are here today. I couldn't find anyone better than you to come and deal with this story, but also telling it from the woman's perspective, because in most cases, the perpetrator is a man who looks like me.
Yes.
It's a man like me, a father, a brother, a husband, and an uncle to someone. And so I needed to hear it from a woman herself, from her perspective. So please, can you open up and begin to share your story?
I truly appreciate the fact that it is a man who's starting the conversation, because in most cases, it was always women talking about their traumas. I love the fact that you invited me as a woman, but not just because you want us to talk about women's traumas, but also acknowledging that men also go through such traumas. Because one thing I said the other day is that in as much as we always talk, and I can only speak about my traumas and mostly it will be women who relate to them. However, there are men who also have went through such traumas. And the saddest thing about men, I'll go back and I'll tell my story, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that the saddest part about men and their traumas is the fact that whenever they speak out, they are always ridiculed by their fellow men, for that matter. If a man was to walk into a police station today and say, I was raped, trust me, the police officers there will laugh at him. Because men's traumas are treated as jokes. It's like they are non-existent. People find it very weird that a man is raped, and that's why most men keep quiet. I've spoken to men whose first sexual encounter was with an older cousin. However, these men refuse to see that as rape because society will laugh at them. Society has forced them to see a man sleeping with a woman as a conquest. That's why women are ridiculed for their sexual encounters, whereas men are applauded for theirs. So hence, when men encounter sexual traumas, it's difficult for them to speak up because according to society, that's a conquest. How do you cry rape as a man? You should be excited, you should be happy that a woman availed herself to you, even if you did not want her. So I'm so happy, Lawrence, that you have opened up, you've spoken about your traumas, and thank you for inviting me once again. And going back to my story, which I've written about it, and for me, when I started writing my first book, which is MOSAIC YANGU, as you said, it's Swahili, it means my mosaic, because I believe that my life is shattered pieces which were put together by God's love to make this amazing woman that I believe I am today, who's here today to try and tell her story so that someone out there can relate to it and find it in themselves to heal. Because sometimes it's difficult for people to heal if they don't know that healing is possible. If they've never seen someone who is similar to them saying that I've walked that journey and this is where I am today. So I said, when I started my book, I was not writing a book, I was just journaling my pain. However, when time went on, I started sharing bits and pieces of my story. And I got to realize that when you can put a face to the previous conqueror, it makes victory more appealing and more attainable. It causes you to say, okay, I was raped and I thought it was the end of the world. However, I see that woman, she tells a story, she was raped as well. I can relate to her. So if she has went through what I've went through or what I'm going through at this moment, then it means it is possible for me to heal as well. Because here's the thing, Lawrence, people seldom tell their moments of falling down. People don't tell their traumas. People don't tell their tragedies. People tell their journeys. Like a person will tell you that I'm a millionaire. They will never tell you that before I became a millionaire, I fell 7 times and I had to get up 8 times. I slept hungry. I've had my cars repossessed. I've had my partner leave me because I was broke. But they will tell you that this is where I am right now. And you want to get there, but they don't tell you that it's a journey to get there. So I told my story so that people can understand that healing is possible. However, in that possibility, there's so much pain. There was a point in my healing journey where I wanted to tap out, where I wanted to stop, because the pain of healing became more painful than the pain itself. So I wanted to end it all. I was like, let's tap out. I'm done. So here's my story. I love saying that my life has all the colors of the spectrum. It's a very beautiful rainbow. There's no color that you will look for and you don't find in my life. I've had my fair share of pain. And somehow I'm here today. There's some dark holes which I had to dig myself out of. And the only thing I had was my smile on my face. I had nothing at all. I had no one. All I had was the smile on my face. And it has kept me sane most of the time. So in summary, my story starts like this. I was raped when I was 6 years old. That was my first encounter of rape.
6 years old.
And I was raped by my mother's boyfriend. And for the longest time in my life, I didn't even know that I was raped when I was 6. So the incident occurred in 1992 in a township called Namahale, Palabora. Palabora is a mining town in the Limpopo province of South Africa. It is close to the Kruger National Park. It's called the town of two summers because we seldom had winter down there.
You're talking to someone that I did a lot of ministry in Palavolo. I think there was a time when I was in Palavolo almost every week. Would drive into Palavolo, and there came a time when my wife and I went to minister in one church in that place, and this guy proposed that we stay there, and we minister in his church. So just move because we were in Tulamahashi, that side of Bushwick Green.
Wow.
And so it took me and my wife to a piece of land, and there was a 2-room building there. And he says, if you accept to pastor this church, this is yours.
Wow.
So we've been to the Kruger, we've watched the elephants and stuff like that. But at that point, the place was excruciatingly hot. And I said, no, I don't want to live in this semi-air.
Palabora is the town of two summers. It is hot.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, so,
but the body acclimatizes to the temperature. We get used to the heat and we love it there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, so we lived there with my mother and her boyfriend. She had taken me. So I grew up in Zanin. So she left me there with my siblings. And when I was 4 years old, and when I was about 5, she came to visit. I was not well, so she had to take me back with her to Palabora. So I moved from a village to a township. And it was like an upgrade for me, the village girl in me. It was exciting at first, but after a while, this new exciting place became a horrific place for me because the man that we lived in, gradually, he will walk into the room as I'm dressing up and just watch me. It felt weird for the 5-year-old me, but I could not even say it. You know, sometimes when you encounter such things as a child, some of our kids don't tell us about the traumas they encounter because they don't even know what to call it.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a name
so
for
he
it.
started when I was about 5 years old, and he will just watch me when I take a bath, and he gradually, because what predators do is that they groom you. They create an environment where their behavior is then perceived as normal. That's why sometimes you will have a teenager being impregnated by her father or a stepfather. And then when confronted, this child will say, but we are in love. And as society, we might even attack her and say, she's breaking her mother's marriage, she's doing this, only to find that this man had been grooming the child from when she was 4 years old. And now you're finding out she's pregnant at 16 and she sees this man as her lover because that's what he groomed her to believe that he is to her. So good evening, Dr. Bamba.
Good evening, Madam Maria, and then good morning, Lawrence.
Thank you for joining us.
Dr. Desiree, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you here, and Maria is telling our story.
Great, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's how he started. He started off by grooming me by making it seem normal for him to be around me when I'm naked. So he'll walk into the bathroom as I'm taking a bath, and he will just watch me bath. Until one day, so there was a bed, but I slept on a reed mat. So I slept on a mat on the floor. So one day he worked shift. He worked at a nearby mine. As I said, Palabora is a mining town. So he worked shift. So sometimes he'll be from night shift to come home in the morning. And my mother will not be there. So this man will come and lie next to me where I will be sleeping on the floor. For the 6-year-old me, it felt weird to have this fully grown man leave his bed and come sleep on the floor. Like, who leaves the comfort of a bed For me, as a child, that was the weird part. Like, why is this man leaving the comfort of his bed? And then he gradually started to come into where I was sleeping naked. So he started off by touching me as I slept there. And when the first time he did that, when I shrugged and I pulled away, this man said to me, "Do not worry, I'm turning you into a woman." That's what he said to me. I was 6 years old. And he will gradually come into the room almost every day, naked, and he started off by rubbing his penis on my vagina. And that went on for days, if not months, until one evening, as I was preparing my place to sleep, I believe that this man had felt that the grooming was done. The grooming stage was done. It was enough. And he believed that I was ready for him to rape me. And he walked into the room as I was preparing my place to sleep. And as he walked in, he had done this so many times, such that when he walked into the bedroom when I was alone, I expected him to come and touch me. I knew what he was coming in to do. So he walks into the room and he closes the door. And then he took off his pants and he stuck his tongue in my mouth like he always did, telling me to suck it. But on that particular day, little did I know this man was not going to rub his penis on my vagina only, but he was gonna push it in. And then he penetrated me and then I screamed. And he tried to keep me quiet. However, I believe that because my mother was in the house on the day, I believe my screams were loud enough for my mom to come in. So my mother walks into the room. He finds me in this man's arms, blood through my thighs, and she beats me up. When she walked in, the baby me, the 6-year-old me, was happy that my mother is here. She's coming to rescue me from this thing that has been happening for so long, which I don't even know what it is. And then she picks me up and she walks out of the house. She leaves me there with this man. And then I run after her. I believe for the 6-year-old me, I assumed that I was wrong. Because as a child, you need an adult to come and tell you what is wrong and what is right. We don't know. When we're born, we expect the ones who are here already to tell us that, okay, this is where you are and this is wrong and that's right. So for me, my mother's punishment towards me informed me that I did something wrong. So I ran after her. I could not find her. I had to go back to the house, but she came back the following morning. It was never discussed. I was not taken to hospital. So that's 1992. And then they end the relationship. We go back home in Zanin. We get there. My sister, who was 4 years older than me, is raped. Round about the time when I was raped. But fortunately for her, she was with my brothers. So they took her to hospital. The perpetrator was arrested and sentenced to jail. So growing up, I remembered my sister's trauma and not mine. So I went through life not knowing that I was raped when I was 6 years old. And then when I was 12, there was this old man who was a traditional healer. So at home, actually, this is the funniest but saddest story of all my stories, because I actually felt responsible, because at home we didn't have food. So we usually go to his house asking for food. So one day my sister sent me there, but we will mostly find the wife. So one day my sister sent me there to go ask for food. When I get there, it's only him, and he invites me to the hut, the rendezvous, where they do consultations in. Then I get in and he says to me, "How can I help you?" And then I tell him that we've come to ask for food. So he knew why we were there and why I was there, because that was not the first time. And then he says, "No, they're not here. They went to town." I'm like, "Okay, I'll come back." When he said there, he was referring to his wife. I was like, "No, I'll come back when she's back from town." And he says to me, "No, you don't have to come back when they come back from town. You can get food now." And he reaches out to his jar, which had money in it. He says to me, "You can get food and money today. However, only if you sit on top of me." And as a 12-year-old, I freaked out and I got up and I was like, "No, I will come back when they're back." And he said to me, oh, so you don't want food today because I'm asking you to do one small thing for me and I'm going to give you money. And I said, no, it's fine. And he said, then you will never get food again. So for me at that moment, it was a choice, I believe, at the time, as a 12-year-old. For me, it was the choice between going home, not getting food, and losing the possibility of ever getting food from this man, or just sitting on top of him. That's when I then walked towards him. This old man laid on his back, took off his pants, and he told me to sit on top of his penis, which I did. And he started to make me jump up and down on top of his penis, and I was bleeding, and he gave me money and food. And he told me that if I ever tell anyone, his ancestors will punish me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what most religious leaders do, whether it's whether it's sangomas or pastors or prophets or bishop or whatever fancy title they give themselves. That's what they do. Most of these healers, they actually rape their patients, all in the name of healing. I've heard stories of pastors that say they give you this impartation of whatever blessing you're seeking through sex. They do that. We've had women with fertility issues who go to these sangomas and these pastors for them to pray for them so that they can have kids, only to be raped by the pastor or the sangoma and conceiving a child. And this woman can't even tell her husband that I was raped by that sangoma or that pastor, because the first question a woman is always asked when she's raped is like, why did you go to that person?
Yeah.
Our issue is never the fact that a woman is raped. Our issue is always, what was she doing? What was she wearing? How drunk was she? Forgetting that people are raped regardless of what they are wearing, what they're drinking, we have old women raped in the comfort of their homes. I was raped when I was 6 years old in a place I called home, a place where I was supposed to be safe in. Yet when a person gets raped, we still interrogate them. Hence, most people don't speak up because they fear that if they speak up, they will be judged. A woman gets persecuted 1,000 times before she even stands in the witness stand after being sexually violated.
No, you're right. You're right. You know, I remember Sherry Zondi.
Yes.
In the Pastor Timothy Motoso trial.
Yes.
It was so painful at one time because I was following that program on TV, watching what was unfolding in the courtyard. It was so painful to actually see the what do you call them, the lawyer for the prosecutor,
the defense attorney.
Yeah. You know, asking us certain questions. And then you realize that is why the women are not telling their stories, because they make you feel that it is your fault. Yeah.
They make you feel like you've committed a crime.
Yes.
And most people watch those things and they decide, you know what, I would rather keep quiet. I cannot be persecuted this way whilst a crime is being committed against me. And that's why most people just keep quiet, because it's better to keep quiet. Because I remember when I was raped when I was 14. Because one day I was sitting by myself and thinking about how I was isolated by society when I was raped at 14. They treated me like I carried the curse of rape, and me being around parents with girl children, it was like as if me being around their girl children will then, like, I will pass the curse upon them. It was like I'm some sort of a plague. It was like I had leprosy. No one wanted me around them because I was going to infect them with the curse of rape. However, when I sit back and I look at everything that happened, a part of me still wonders that, and not just me, most women that I've spoken to who have been raped, they tell me that it happened again and again and again. And for me, I have this thing of believing that the child in me, the 6-year-old in me, was carrying her pain, and she demanded to have pain to be felt, and she demanded healing. And when pain is not healed, the only thing it does, it replicates itself. Because I was raped when I was 14. So I was on my way home from a World AIDS Day celebration. It was on the 1st of December, and the year was 1999. And no, 2000, not 1999, it was 2000, on the 1st of December. And I was on my way home, and I met these two men. They were known in the society, that in the community, that they are hardcore criminals. So when you meet them, you get freaked out, you're petrified. So one of them grabs my arm and says, "You're going to be my wife today." And for the 14-year-old me, the one thing I kept saying in my heart, Lawrence and Dr. Desiree, was that I need to stay alive. You know, when you've read stories of women being raped and murdered, not just women, children. I read this story yesterday of a 6-year-old baby who was raped and killed. They say she was raped and her head was hit by rocks. Like, so they raped her and they killed her like they were killing Stefano in the Bible. They hit her with stones on the head. That's the world we live in. So for me, when I met these two men whom I knew as criminals in the society, who showed no mercy to their victims, for me that day, I said in my heart, whatever gets to happen today, if I come out alive, I have won. It is said that as a woman, I feel lucky that the men who raped me did not kill me. That's something that as a woman in South Africa, I feel like this is a victory worth celebrating. The fact that the men who raped me did not kill me. It's something worth celebrating, because I've heard of women who were raped and killed. So on that day at 14, one thing that kept playing in my mind was that, dude, you need to stay alive. That's all you need, to stay alive. And the only way you're going to stay alive is to cooperate. You're not going to fight, because even if you want to fight, you do not stand a chance. You are this tiny person and these men are huge. So they took me to a house where they stayed. They were with another lady. When we got to the house, the first thing that happened was that one of them started beating up the lady they were with. They beat her to a pulp. They beat her so bad that it terrified me as I was watching the beating. And when he was done beating her, he came to me and he said to me, "If you do not do what my friend tells you to do, that's what's going to happen to you." I knew that this is a matter of life and death. And this man sitting next to me started touching me like a man will touch his woman. And he told me that he's going to sleep with me. He raped me right through the night. I remember when he started raping me, I cried and he covered my mouth. And at some point, I got tired of trying to scream. And he says to me, "You see, it's not painful anymore." And the fact is that it's not that it was not painful. The fact is that it was painful, but I was tired. I was tired of crying. And that's what happens in everyday life. Sometimes we see people quiet and we're thinking, no, she's done crying. It means she's now used to the situation. But at some point you just get tired. At some point you get to this place in your life, you realize that my screams are meaningless. This person is deaf to my pain. So I just kept quiet. And it was around 4 a.m. when these two people decided to let me go, with the instruction that if I reported them, they're going to come and kill me. And I left the house, and as I walked out, the 14-year-old me, now I have to go home. Then I go into panic. I have to worry. For an African child disappearing overnight, you are in trouble. When I get home, I'm in trouble. So I went to a friend's house, and I appreciate the fact that I was scared of going home, because had I went home, I would not have told them that I was raped, because I had no desire to be killed. I believed those men when they said they were going to kill me. So I went to a friend's house, I knocked at her window, and she came out, and I said to her, I need you to take me home when the sun rises, and I need you to tell them that I spent the night here. And she said, but where did you sleep? I'm like, I can't tell you. She said, but I'm not going to go to your mother and lie on your behalf if you're not going to tell me where you were. Then I started crying, and she said, tell me what happened. And I said, if I tell you, you have to keep it to yourself. And she said, yeah, I'll keep it to myself. Then I told her that I was raped, and before I can even finish the story, she said, we're going to the police. I got so terrified. I begged her, literally begged her to not go to the police. And she said, if you don't want to come to the police with me, I'm going to go to the police by myself and report this. This young woman was about 2-3 years older than me, but she stood up for me. She did something for me which my mother had failed to do for me when I was 6 years old. She went to the police. I had to follow her. I had no choice but to follow her. We went to the police. She was the one talking. And the matter was reported. The crazy part is that when they asked who the perpetrator was, when my friend mentioned the names, the police officer said, oh, he's done it again. That's when I found out that the man that raped me when I was 14 was actually out on bail for rape. 500 rand bail. That's where our justice system gets to fail us. A man rapes a woman, he's arrested, he gets 500 rand bail. Before rehabilitation, he's let out. And I'm not saying criminals must be condemned. I understand. I'm in this space in my life where I understand that one encounters suffering before they cause suffering. I believe that every perpetrator in the world have pain within themselves which they were never afforded an opportunity to heal. And I'm not saying this to excuse crimes. All I'm saying is that no one is born a criminal. No one is born a murderer. No one is born a rapist. But we encounter things in our lives and we're never given an opportunity to heal those things, or we don't even know how to heal them. And the only way we know is what was done to us. So we find ourselves causing the same pain which was caused to us. So this man, before he can even be rehabilitated, before he can even be made to understand that what he has done was wrong, he was let back into society at 500 rand only. And he committed the same crime again. And then I was taken to hospital with a female police officer. However, when I got to hospital, I was attended to by a male nurse. At 14 years old, no one ever bothered to ask me if I was okay with having a man touch me just a few hours after another man had violated me. Yes, the male nurse did not rape me. However, my body was still terrified of a man's touch. Subconsciously, I still felt that a man is something that I need to stay away from because another man had just violated me. However, I got to hospital and I was attended to by a male nurse. I remember as I laid there and he was having a casual conversation with the police officer. I understand the gentleman was just doing his job. At the manner in which he handled everything, he was doing his job. I remember as he was taking the samples from my vagina, he said, "These things heal fast. She will be okay in no time." By these things, he was referring to my vagina and everything that he saw in there. And I went home. I was not offered any psychological help. I was not referred to a shrink. So no one cared about my psychological well-being after the trauma. So it was something that I just had to go home at 14 and deal with it all by myself. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even have the ability and the capacity to comprehend everything. I remember how I stood in the witness box and narrated everything as if it's nothing traumatic. Lawrence, if the magistrate had used my emotions to make the ruling, that man would have walked. Because I stood there and I narrated the story like it was nothing. The other thing that made me not to cry was the fact Lawrence, you're muted. You're talking, but you're muted. Yes.
Okay, my camera is actually frozen.
You muted again. You're on mute again. I can't hear you, and I'm sure nobody can hear you. Should I continue talking? You're on mute. You are a proper BBT, born before technology. You still on mute, Lawrence. You are still on mute. You are here just being a proper BBT. What happened to your assistant? You had an assistant in the beginning. Where is he? He must come and help you. Okay. Okay. So the other thing that made me to press was the fact my sister, as I said, that she was raped when around the time when I was raped the first time in 1992. So growing up, that was a sexual trauma that I knew. So when I was still at the police station, my sister came with my brother and my mother, and she started crying. For me, I felt like if I vocalized my emotions, if I cried and I allowed myself to feel everything, I'm going to make her relive her trauma, because that was the most traumatic sexual event that I knew. I didn't know my own sexual traumas. So that was the other thing that made me to narrate my story in a manner that I did not show emotions. I know that now I'm still narrating and I'm not showing emotions, but now it's not because I'm trying to protect anyone or I'm whatever. It's because I've allowed myself to feel the pain. I'm going to go to the point where I've allowed myself to feel all the pains of my traumas. So I've allowed myself to feel the pain. However, when I was 14, I did not allow myself to feel the pain because I was trying to protect my sister. And over and above that, I didn't even know that it was okay for me to feel the pain. Because sometimes as people, we don't know if it's okay to feel our pain. We don't know if it's okay for us to say, I'm not okay. Because sometimes we are applauded for being, we call it being strong. When people don't express their emotions, that's why most men don't express their emotions. Because it shows strength. You know, emotions are for women. There's this new terms, there's simps and all that. So sometimes men are applauded for not crying because they are regarded as alpha males, because being an alpha means you are emotionless. So that was my story when I was 14. And then I became a mother when I was 16. And I started to live with my ex-partner when I was 17, turning 18. And I lived with him until I was 30 years old. In that period of me living with him, there was so many sexual abuse. There was so much sexual abuse in the relationship, and most of it which I could not even vocalize. I could not even speak about it, because at times women in committed relationships, even if it's not a marriage, do not speak about their sexual traumas, because it is made to believe that, like, people are made to believe that when you are in a marriage or a committed relationship with someone, then this person owns your body. Some people even quote the Bible, you know. Some people quote Corinthians saying that when you become one, this other one owns the other one's body. So meaning that the other person has authority over your body and they can just have you whenever they feel like it. Hence, most married people do not speak out about the sexual traumas and violations and all that they encounter within the relationships, because society will look at them funny, like, how are you saying that your man raped you? You know, we have women actually in the forefront. I've seen women at weddings stand up and say, when you are angry, you are only angry from the waist up. Waist down, you cannot. So from the waist down, there's no emotions, there's no anger, there's no anything. All you have to do is to submit your body to your partner, regardless of how you feel about them, regardless of how they make you feel. Hence, most women do not speak about the sexual abuse they get to encounter within their marriages. And so that was the story for me in my relationship with the man who fathered 4 of my children. And I remember a few years into the relationship, this man started to, because as we were fighting in the relationship, one of the things that he said was that he is the person that he is towards me because when he met me, I was not a virgin. So this man basically made me feel like me not being a virgin when I met him was the cause of all the problems we had in the relationship. And a part of me at some point in my life actually believed that. And I actually felt horrible that me not being a virgin when I met this man as the reason our relationship was in turmoil. And you know, the funniest thing is that when this man met me, he knew about the rape at 14. He knew that I was a mother already. However, somewhere along the relationship, he chose to use me not being a virgin as a reason for his behavior. And I've seen that. I've seen men who meet a woman who has a certain weight, whether she's thin according to society or she's big according to society. Like, you meet me wearing a size 28 and 2 years down the line you tell me that you prefer women who wear size 36. But you met me at a size 28. And if you knew in your heart that you wanted a size 36, you should have just went to a size 36. You see a man who meet a woman at a bar with a glass of wine in her hand, and then he marries her, and then he's like, I don't want a woman who drinks. But you found me with a glass of wine in my hand. If you wanted someone who did not have a glass of wine in her hand, you should have went for that. But instead, people will meet you as you are and then demand out of you their ideal woman or their ideal man. And when you don't become their ideal partner, they then start cheating or they start abusing you physically, emotionally, or financially. And when you question why they do that to you, they will revert to you not being their ideal partner. And when they meet you, their ideal partners do exist. Well, some do exist. And you ask yourself, why didn't you just go to that ideal partner in the first place? Why did you come to me seeing very well that I have a tattoo on my arm, and then 3 years down the line, like, I don't want a woman with a tattoo. Like, but I had this when we met. So why did you come and approach me seeing this, and you know in your heart that this is not something that you want? So with my partner, the problem was virginity. Tattoos can be removed through laser. Virginity, I didn't know where to get it. But I was so desperate in that relationship such that if there was a shop where they sold it, I'm sure I would have walked and bought it. Because I went into the relationship with a void in me, and I hoped that the relationship would fill it. So I exposed myself to this man's abuse, and I protected him from the world, you know, as they groom women that you must protect your man's dignity. You must do this. There's so many must do's for women in relationships, and many of those involve a woman exposing herself to abuse towards this man while protecting him from this world. And that's exactly what I did in my relationship. I protected him from the world and I exposed myself to his abuse. And this abuse actually included sexual abuse. And because this man will then demand sexual acts which I could not fulfill, which I was uncomfortable doing. And his reasoning was still the fact that I was not a virgin when he met me. And he told me that if I allowed him to do some of those sexual acts, that will fulfill his desire of having met a woman who was a virgin. So I allowed, I was an adult. I can choose to sit here and say I was a victim. I believe that as an adult, now this is me talking about adults, not kids. As an adult, you are a victim the first time a crime is committed against you by this person. However, how you react to that crime the first time will determine what will happen next. So my silence was what gave this man the power to go on doing what he was doing, because in my silence, I consented to the sexual abuse. And the first time it happened, I was a victim. However, the second time and the third time and the 10th time it happened, I was now an accomplice to crimes committed against me. And that's the sad part as people in relationship, not just women. That's the sad part, because we become perpetrators, we become accomplices to crimes which are committed against us, because we are quiet, because we don't want to speak about it, because we are protecting the relationship. And while protecting this relationship, hurting ourselves, we are made to believe of this love that carries pain, this love that you have to hold on. And this knife that you're holding at its sharpest points cuts you deep, and you bleed and you bleed, and no one tells you that you will bleed to death one day. I've seen women who held on to the knife and they bled to death. They were buried and their husbands go on and they still live their lives. So, Lawrence, I hope you come back. So, as I said, that growing up, I did not have a recollection of my childhood traumas, most of them. In 2017, I went on a fast. I went on a fast for 40 days. And it was at the end of that fast when I started to have a recollection of my childhood memories. I remember I was lying in bed on a Saturday morning when I started to remember bits and pieces of my traumas. And it was so crazy because I started off by remembering my life when I was still with the father of my kids. Because at this time I had walked away from the relationship. I walked away in 2015. So yeah, met him when I was 16. I left him when I was 30. So I gave 14 years of my life to our relationship. I don't want to say to him because it was a relationship between me and him. So when I was 30, I walked away. When I was 31, turning 32, I went on a 40-day fast. And after the fast, that's when I started to remember our marriage. I remembered our relationship. I remembered all the traumas I had encountered in the relationship. I remembered how this man will disappear for weeks, and when he comes back, the first thing he will do was to accuse me of sleeping with other men in his absence. And to prove that I did not sleep with other men in his absence, this man will stick his fingers up my vagina to check if there was no man sleeping with me in his absence. And in his absence, this man was living with another woman, you know. And I started to remember such things and how I've allowed him to sexually abuse me over the years, and it made me angry. I was shocked. I shocked myself. I wondered, why am I angry? Why do I feel the way I'm feeling about this? It's something that happened to me as an adult. I remembered this, but why am I remembering this in a painful way today? And I remembered the rape at 14. I remembered the cigarette scent on that man's body. For me, it was an aha moment because as an adult, I was never attracted to men who smoke. Actually, I was like, if you smoke, that's a deal breaker for me. Like, it's a no. Doesn't matter how much I liked you or anything. If you are a smoker, then that's it. But when I started to remember the rape at 14 and being angry and seeing it for what it was, and I remember the cigarette scent on that man's body, and that made me realize why I did not like men who smoke. So for me, that was like a defense mechanism. That was my way of protecting myself from the trauma. So I remembered everything gradually. And because it was things that I knew at the back of my mind, I was okay. But I became very shocked when I started to remember the rape at 6. It shocked me. I could not believe it. At some point, I thought I was hallucinating. It was just about 2 weeks after the 40-day fast. I was like, maybe my body is readjusting to food. So it is creating images in my head which did not occur. Until I went to see a shrink, and yeah, I call her a shrink, a psychologist, and she said to me, no, you're not losing your mind, you're not crazy. Sometimes when we encounter traumas, if they are too deep for our minds to handle at the time, our subconscious mind tends to hide them until the time when it feels we're ready. And for someone who like to call their inner being or their subconscious God, I can say that God protected me from my traumas until a time when He believed that I was ready to handle them. He believed that I was ready to face them and to handle the pain. Because one thing I knew for sure is that had I remembered the sexual violence encounter when I was raped at 14, if I remembered that I was raped at 6, right there, chances are I wouldn't have survived it, because when I was 31, turning 32, when I remembered everything, I felt like my world was crashing down. Every part of me hurt. I was in so much emotional pain such that it hurt physically. My skin hurt. My skin was painful. That's how bad the emotional pain was. And I then embarked on my healing journey. But for me to heal, I needed to acknowledge things for what they were. I remember at some point I called the rape molestation because it kind of sounded better to say a man rubbed his penis on my vagina instead of saying, actually he raped me, you know? And it was kind of difficult. I remember I even had to go to the house where the rape occurred. And there was a new person living in that house. I remember when there was a friend, and when we got there, I asked if I can go into the house, and the man said, why? I said, I can't tell you. And he said, then if you can't tell me why you want to get into this house, then I'm not going to let you in. And then I said, okay, and walked away. And as I walked away, I believe that this man was curious. And at the same time, he was feeling bad because he didn't know why we were there. And that's when he said, no, you can come in. And then we went in. My friend stayed behind at the door. I went into the house. I relived everything. As I walked out of this house, I was crying. I wanted to explain to this man what happened. And every time when I tried to open my mouth and speak, I could not. All I did was cry and had to walk away. And we left this man there in shock. He could not understand what was happening. Fortunately, he got hold of my friend. He called her and said, what happened? Did someone die in that house? And then my friend gave him my number and said, please call her. Let her tell you why she was there and why she was crying. And I told him that in 1992, mind you, this is 2017. So I had to tell him that in 1992, in that house, I was 6 years old. My mother's boyfriend raped me. And now I'm trying to heal the pain. And for me to heal that pain, I have to face it and acknowledge it for what it was. And that's how I got to acknowledge my pain. That's how I got to learn to heal. It was not easy. And as I said in the beginning, that at some point the pain of the healing journey became more painful than the pain itself. Like the pain of healing became more painful than the pain itself. And I was like, can we just stop the healing journey? Because I think I'm far worse than I was before I embarked on this journey, you know? And then the other thing is that when a person the other thing is that when a person goes on a healing journey, they tend to expect certain people around them to support them. So in closing, those who have been watching and they feel that my story has triggered certain parts of their lives that they want to speak about, that they want to go and seek healing for. There are crimes which were committed and they want to report. That's the other thing. If a crime has been committed against you, even if it was 30 years ago, 50 years ago, you can still get justice for yourself today, depending on what justice is to you. So as you choose to speak, as you choose to embark on your journey, I know that you may expect certain people to be by your side and support you and help you throughout the journey. Trust me, there are people close to you who may distance themselves from you because healing is messy. And other people, so other people may distance themselves from you because they do not want to help you heal. Some, they are scared because your traumas trigger their traumas, which they are not ready to deal with. So as you go and you allow yourself to feel your pain, you allow yourself to learn how to heal, do not go there with expectations from other people. I hope my story has triggered something in you, and I hope it gives you courage to heal. I hope it gives you courage to speak out, because it is the silence of those who encounter traumas and those who witness crimes being committed that gives the perpetrators the power to continue committing their crimes. And thank you, Lawrence, for having me tonight. And thank you, everyone, for watching and listening to me talk for a whole hour. I hope you have a good night, and I hope you've learned something today. Ke a leboga.